is change the agenda and change the format a little bit here. We're gonna do the approval of the minutes and the Treasury report, and then we're gonna skip ahead and do an IHP report. And we're probably gonna open it up to some questions right after the IHP report, and then go into an update on the utility company, waste management, and then the Fishers Island School presentation. I just think that will be more productive this one time. And if there are a real lot of questions on IHP, we will hold it to 5 minutes of the questions, and then we'll move on and do the questions at the end again. So with that, I know the minutes have been distributed. Any comments, edits, or changes to the minutes from September 15th meeting? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 15th meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Okay, approved. Dickie, you want to give a brief Treasury report, and then Chris, you're going to come on?
Yeah, very brief, Willard. Thanks. 3 items to review. First, the Treasury report. Thanks again, Mary Beth, for all the information. We have $6,303 in our checking account. I want to say thank you to those of you who have donated recently. Appreciate that. I know that there were some checks that were sent in even in August that took a little bit longer to get deposited as we shifted through our management. And we've also had a recent payment of $1,000 to Nick Wilmerding for the services he provided as our secretary over a couple of months. And thank you again to Nick for that. We also have an additional account balance of $878 in our PayPal account. So in total, we have just over $7,000 for the ICB to fund our expenses. We only have one outstanding invoice for a utility company phone bill, which Tom Siebens, I promise we will pay. So that's it for the Treasury report. Again, thank you to everybody who has contributed to become members of the Island Community Board. We do count on your support and ask for everybody to consider a $25 contribution, individual contribution to the ICB to help keep everything going as the central source of Island information. Moving over to governance, this is our annual meeting in October. It's typically held October Columbus Day weekend on that Saturday, but because of the success of these Tuesday calls and participation, people are used to it. That's why we're doing it now. Leading up to this meeting, I reached out from the governance committee to all of the membership organizations on the island, the organizations that appoint directors who serve for the next year, their annual appointments. And I'll just read out for everybody's edification who those people are. Louisa Evans serves as our Town of Southold representative. She's not appointed by anybody, but by the fact that she does what she does, and she's ex officio on the board. The Fishers Island Recreation Path is represented by John McGillian. The Fishers Island Fire District is represented by Paul Giles. The Waste Management District is represented by David Burnham. Walsh Park is represented by Matt Edwards. FIDCO is represented by Mimi Gary. The Island Health Project represented by Susie Parsons. The Fishers Island Ferry District represented by Jeb Cook. The School District by Christian Arsenal. The Fishers Island Utility Company by Tom Siebens. The Fishers Island Conservancy by Tom Sargent. H.L. Ferguson Museum by Elizabeth McCants, and the Fishers Island Community Center by Jeannie Cook. I just want to say thank you to all of those organizations for your steadfast support of the ICB and for those appointments to ensure that we have a lively and active, engaged conversation. The last thing I wanted to say about governance was through some of the input from some of the organizations over the last month in particular, we got some questions about the ICB bylaws and how the organizational directors vote, who's represented, how it all happens. went back and reviewed the bylaws that were most recently updated in 2017 with volunteer counsel Barry Bryan helping to develop those updates. And I'll be honest with you, we have a little bit more work to do just to clarify the bylaws so that voting rights and representation is all very, very clear. There's some ambiguity there. And so I'm just telling the community that we will engage as a group, a working committee to address those bylaws in the weeks ahead. And we'll bring those forward for approval either at the November meeting or December meeting.
Great.
Thanks, Willard. I think that's it.
Thanks, Dickie. Now we're going to move to the Island Health Project. For those of you that have been on Fishnet or got the emails, we've had some unfortunate activity. We sent out, Chris sent out a letter last night talking about the fact that we had one positive case and had one number of people in quarantine, as well as the fact that we had one symptomatic case who that person has now tested positive, or the results are back. So we have 2 cases. So we felt that with all of the activity for Columbus Day weekend and all the work that the IHP is doing and that the contact tracing people are doing, it was important to get this information out right away so that it would make their job easier. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris and Meki if she's on.
So, hi, everybody. Indeed, 2 cases, one from last weekend. That individual case has led to 27 people in quarantine. Direct contacts were 17, 14 of whom are still on the island, 3 have left. And then over the weekend, this last weekend, we had another positive test, and that individual led to 22 contacts, with a total of 27 in quarantine, 9 remaining on the island, and 13 have left. In addition to those people in quarantine, basically 4 businesses were affected: the Beach Plum, the Village Market, Tiggy's exercise classes, and also the Catholic Church. So the spread was quite wide. But Meki and I both we believe we've contacted the principal individuals, and of course there's always what we call the contacts of contacts. Should any of the immediate contacts turn positive, which we will test in about a week, that then will lead to further contact tracing. Meki, can you add to that?
Yeah, so Chris kind of went over the numbers, but just to clarify, so we currently have 2 positive cases on the island and a 3rd individual who is symptomatic, but their initial test came back negative, but we're assuming now it'll be positive and the test might have just missed the virus. So we're assuming there are 3 positive cases currently on Fisher's Island. All 3 of them are staying on island. I also have gone through the year-round census, so the off-season census, sorry. And it looks like, based on running against some other lists, that we are missing about 115 year-round residents on that list. So if you are on this call and you've never signed up for the off-season census, please sign up for it. I'll add a link in the chat. Or if you know anyone else, a family member who hasn't signed up for it. Also, if you know anyone who might have come to the island this past weekend or is coming up on weekends or is coming up once a month, it's really important that they get on that census too, so that I can track them down in case we have another outbreak as we just had. So I just want to make sure everyone knows to continue to fill out that census. And I know that on November 3rd, we might have another big flow of people coming back to the island to vote, as we had similarly this past weekend with a long weekend. So make sure that you're filling out the census. I know it's getting cold, but try to layer up and socialize outside with masks if you can. try to limit how many people you're indoors with. And I know we've been doing this for a long time, but it's time to layer up and stay outside. But I think that's it.
One thing I'd like to add to what Meki said is that we're asking everybody that was here and has left to keep to keep themselves in the census. If they came for the weekend and didn't sign up for the census and now have left, and you know of those people, could you please ask them to sign up for the census and just put in the date that they came and the date that they left, so Meki has that information. So if we need that contact tracing, we can do it. Because I think there are people, we all think there are people that came for the weekend and did not sign up for the fall census. So that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Willard. Can I also add to that quickly? If you are you can be on the census without getting the symptom tracker. So the census is more of a database, so I can track you down in the case that you were in contact with someone who tests positive or who's symptomatic. So even if you're off island, if you go onto the census, I can remove you from the symptom tracker directly, or you can unsubscribe from it.
Okay.
Willard, I'd like to add something too. As if you read the letters yesterday, then or today, you'll know that we mentioned that I've been alerted that there's a slowdown in the turnaround time for testing. And it's gone from 1 day, which we were enjoying very much, to 2 to 3 days. So when you get tested, expect the wait to be longer. And I can't emphasize enough that it's really required that you limit your activity until you get back a negative test. And again, even when the test comes back negative, its usefulness really only covers the few days prior, or it doesn't cover the few days prior. So any activity that you might have had in almost a week up to the time that you have the test, really we can't say for sure that the test covers that period. So a negative test is by no means, a pass for any kind of activity. The activity that we're finding is the most dangerous is the unmasked face-to-face indoor activity, which will obviously be the kind of stuff that we'll be tempted to do more and more often. But the dinner parties, as much as we enjoy them, is really where a lot of the damage is being done. And so we're not through this by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's getting worse. And, in many ways, we should revert to the kinds of caution that we had when all this began, when we really were remaining in extremely tight-knit circles and not going outside of it. So this disease is deadly, and we've been lucky so far to have avoided that. But with increased cases, that may not be the case in the future.
Right.
Right, Chris or Meki, I have a question that came to me on the ICB email this morning, and one of you, I'm sure, can answer it. The question was, if one member of a household has been exposed and has been told to quarantine, does every member of the household have to quarantine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So
Makes sense.
Yes.
That's what I would think. Okay,
So
if the person is on, who asked the question, it came from an anonymous email, but it was a valid question, so I'm putting it forward, and I hope that person is on and got the answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Beth. We have another question. Do we still need to call the doctor's office before signing up for an appointment on my chart for Chris or Di if she's on?
I'm not quite sure I understand that.
Yeah, I'm not either, but
I think so. I think, if I'm not mistaken, because now that we're scheduling tests through my chart rather than calling that hotline number, if the question is asking, do you still need to call the office to get the test ordered before you schedule it on my chart? The answer is yes. So if you call the office, one of the staff will put the test in for you, then it will pop up on your my chart account and you can schedule it directly through there. But you do need to initially call the office.
Great. Great. Thank you. All right. We will move on and open it up for questions at the additional questions at the end. We're going to get a brief report from Tom Siebens and on the utility company, and then a brief one from David Burnham on waste management before we move into the school presentation. So Tom, if you're, I think you're on mute. If you want to unmute your iPad, or we'll unmute it for you.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
First of all, our priority at the utility company since April has been keeping our staff free of COVID. These individuals are difficult to find substitutes for. So thank you everyone for understanding why utility employees may have been strict about social distancing when they interact with the community. Secondly, I'd like to make a public service announcement to those of you that have houses that are not completely winterized and normally have your water meters removed so they don't freeze during the winter. It's great that you may be staying into the shoulder season, but please don't wait for the first frost to ask for your meter to be removed. Once a water meter freezes, it can be damaged and the owner is responsible for the replacement. Thank you. Now on to water big picture. Some of you may have heard my update to the ICB a few weeks ago. We continue to await guidance from the regulators on our plans for renovating the water distribution system. Without that, we can't really plan it and figure out the cost and the financing and ultimately the rate structure and rate increases that will be necessary. This is going to be a multi-million-dollar, multi-year project done in phases, and we'll let you know as soon as we have something definitive to report on that. The good news is that the water sources on the island continue to perform very well. We're using mostly well water now. We got through the summer drought without any problem. That's all thanks to the new filtration system, water well maintenance, and obviously the team that devotes its full time to keeping the system running. I'd also like to thank everyone who has been cooperating with the restrictions that we put on use of Middle Farms and Treasure Pond a couple of years ago. That's important because those ponds are actually connected to the aquifers that are the source for our drinking water. So keeping those ponds healthy, free of contaminants and so forth is actually quite important. And ultimately they could be a source of filtered drinking water if we had a severe drought and the wells didn't perform. And in a time of climate change, you really have to plan for that sort of thing. So thank you. We do continue to remain concerned about the number of private wells on the island, particularly because people aren't reporting how much they pump and they're not necessarily monitoring the salinity of the aquifer. If you pump too much fresh water, you can allow seawater to come in and that would permanently damage the aquifer. That's not something we have direct authority over, but it is something the community should be thinking about because water is sort of a shared resource. So on the electric company, there we're also working on a master infrastructure plan. The first step is to increase the lineman staffing because it's been chronically understaffed and you can't really take on big modernization projects unless you have enough qualified professionals. So we're looking to hire an additional lineman. The staffing has been made possible by the rate increase that is going, well, actually went into effect October 1st to increase the revenue so the electric company could pay 2 additional linemen. The next step is to install a remote metering system. Modern meters give you a lot more data, and certainly if you can read them remotely, it's very labor saving. The meters also, the old meters tend to underreport consumption, so revenue increases when you put in modern meters, which is a good thing. The other important thing about the meters will be they will provide a lot more data on monitoring use of the system, and it will help the engineers who design the modernization figure out what we should be doing and what's best. The modernization we know will have 3 phases. One is sort of the fix the pipes phase, which is really replacing some badly deteriorating cable, as well as some old delta transformers, which are prevalent on the East End and difficult to maintain and somewhat dangerous. So that's going to be step number 1. Step 2 is going to be putting in an additional marine cable to America. The cable we have is fine, but in the long term, with increasing demand and in order to improve the voltages on the island, we will need a second cable. And eventually that will enable us to incorporate renewable energy generation on the island. Some of you may have seen my article in the Foghorn a few weeks ago that there's a lot of interest in renewables, but it's not economic to build them unless in the off season all the surplus power can actually be sold off island. And that's going to require a second marine cable. So that's sort of big picture on the electric company. For telephone, we're also working on a master plan. The good news there is the broadband backbone that Chris Finan and Brian Martini put in 6 years ago actually was critical during this summer of COVID. We were able to carry the load, the demand. I don't think anyone had serious problems working by remote thanks to the broadband system. And part of the plan will be to continue expanding the fiber optic network on the island. The dream would be to get the last mile to everybody's house, although that's probably down the road. The other major component of that is our link to the mainland is through a microwave link. And we have gotten close to capacity on that at certain times. Usually it's July 4th weekend in the evening when everybody's streaming stuff. You can really see it get up to close to the limit. And so we're going to add microwave capacity as needed. But really the long-term solution to that is to put a fiber optic cable from the island to the mainland. And we would do that by incorporating it into the new electric cable. So big picture, that's where we're trying to go with planning for telecommunications. I'm happy to answer questions, but as Willard noted, we have quite a heavy report agenda. So I'll be happy to do that at the end.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you very much. David, you want to give us a brief waste management update?
Brief it will be. You guys all know what we do at Waste Management. The commissioners recently passed the 2021 budget, which will include a $90,000 deduction in taxes levied from this past year. The board and district are in a period of recalibration where we are critically reviewing our management structure and operations in an effort to provide better service at a better value. Wish us luck. End of report.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, keep your questions to the end or just send them in the chats and then we'll address them at the end if you're thinking of them right now. And we'll move on to Christian and the presentation for the school.
Great. Thanks, Willie.
I think you're going to have to make Christian a host.
Oh, they already got it.
Okay,
Already.
great.
All right. Everybody can see that, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for allowing us the time to present on our school's project. This is a big night for our school and for me, because it's something that, you know, I've been talking about since I've been here for 4 years. And I know before me, Karen Goodwin and even superintendents before her have worked with their boards around this project. As you know, our school building in its current form was built in 1972. And there's a lot of issues with the current building that are hopefully going to be addressed with this project plan. With me tonight, I have Christine Crowley, who's our financial advisor, and David Quisenberry, who's our lead architect. His firm QA&M out of Farmington, Connecticut, has been working with us for the past couple years to get our project to the point it is now. The last time we spoke as a community on this was March of 2020. It seems like so far long ago, but March 2020, we came to you and gave you a very general framework of our projected cost and a projected timeline. And we're very happy to report that the projected cost falls right within what we said in March. The timeline is going to be adjusted a little bit because of sort of the timing of COVID and where we are with our budget vote or referendum vote. And I'm going to let Christine and David talk more about that. But before I hand it off to them, I just want to sort of cue us up a little bit and say, I think we all understand, and I think now more than ever with COVID and with how many families we've had stay and enjoy our school on the island, that the year-round population on this island, I feel, is directly linked to the quality of Fisher's Island School. There is not going to be a family who is going to commit to living here if they don't know that their school is of top quality. And our staff and our board has been working on that long before me to improve the quality of school, to get it to a place where we're highly recognized in the state of New York for what we do with our kids. And there's still a lot of work to be done, but just to share with everybody, this past year, the 1920 school year, Fisher's Island School was recognized as one of 582 high achieving, high progress recognition schools in the whole state of New York. And of that 582, only 12 of them are schools that are K through 12. The reason that's of note is because this award, this distinction is based upon a variety of metrics, and you can't miss on any of them to get this award. And that's hard enough to do if you're just a high school or just a middle school or just elementary school. But we did it last year across students who are ages 3 all the way up to 18. And it shows the quality of what we do every day. The quality of what we do every day has not dropped 1 inch this current year, in this unprecedented year. And we even picked up, 15 to 20 new students because of all of this. So I'm so proud of our staff. I'm so grateful to our Board of Ed. Our school is doing wonderful things, and it is, as I said, directly linked to who wants to live here. So I think that the project we're proposing is essential for all of those reasons. A day like today, it's been raining all day outside, and therefore it has been raining all day inside with our various leaks in the roof and things like that. But I'm going to let our architect David go through some of the essential aspects of this project, many of which are security related, many of which are just academic focus in terms of bettering the academic environment for our kids. And this is just the start of the conversation. We are offering, really, I'm available at any time to have a one-on-one conversation, but as a full group, we have October 21st, which is our next Board of Ed meeting, for any follow-up questions from this presentation. And then once again, on November 18th, we'll have another Board of Ed meeting and a public hearing on this project for the ultimate public vote on whether or not we can push forward with this, which will happen on December 1st. All of this will be presented in a budget newsletter. All of this will be presented on our school website. So please continue to look for more information as we go. But we consider tonight sort of the kickoff for 45 straight days of giving our community as much information as they can get before they go and vote on December 1st. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to first David Quisenberry, our architect, and he's going to run you through our project.
Thank you, Christian. I don't know if you have the ability to turn that into a slideshow, so we're just seeing
Yeah.
the main slide. Is that there we go.
There you go.
There you go.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this. It's great for me being able to present this to you, especially without having to get on a ferry and actually come out there to see you all. So, Christian, can you move on to the next slide? So what I want to do is walk you through a little bit about the process that we've gone through. Christian mentioned we've been working on this for quite some time already just to get it to where we are. And so one of the first things we did, of course, is to evaluate the facility that's there now and to try to really understand what it has that's going for it, as well as the things that need help. Also related to not just capital condition, but relative to what a modern school building would be in this day and age. And a lot of that had to do initially with concerns about security to the building. We're doing lots of security projects across Connecticut right now. And so that was one of the original driving elements of the project. But then as we dug into it, we realized programmatically there's some real challenges with primarily the elementary area of the building, and then just simply mechanical systems, and as Christian mentioned, the roof, which is a real existing problem with the building. There were numerous reports done several years ago, primarily back 5 years ago, when there was another architect that was hired to just do a survey of the existing building and what condition it was in. And that was sort of the starting point for our project and our research on that. So we started off with basically the first steps was to actually get a survey of the property. It was kind of surprising that such a thing didn't really exist. So we had a surveyor come out to the island and do a full property survey, including all researching in the land records and deeds and all that to get us an accurate starting point. So we knew, even though we weren't really proposing any significant additions or anything to the school, it's still important for us on any project to have that as a base map. We also contracted with a company to do a hazardous material survey of the school and go through and test everything from pipe insulation to floor tiles and all of that, and and just as a starting point, that is also a requirement of any project through the New York State Education Department. So that was one of the first things we did. Fortunately for you, there's very, very little hazardous materials in your school. So there's not a lot of concern about how we would move the project forward. Then what we did is, after meeting with Christian and other staff members, we basically sat down and said, let's figure out what this school should be and what is it going to cost. So if you can move to the next slide. So we came up with a list of priorities for this project. And as I mentioned, security was actually at the top of the list. Primarily what it is right now, if you've been to the school, you basically walk in the front door and the office is in the center of the school. And so you not only come into the school, you have to walk through the school some distance before you come to the office. So if somebody were to come for not such good reasons, once you've let them into the building to talk to them, they could actually go in another direction before you had any control over them. So that's a very important aspect of what we were doing, was to try to do that, is try to get the administrators up near the entrance where they can control access to the building. I also mentioned the elementary wing, which is right now is primarily pretty much just an open multi-purpose space with some folding partitions. And what we really wanted to do to enhance the usability and the functionality of that area was to make it where we literally had some actual enclosed classrooms. We were able to accomplish that and still have flexibility, but that was something very important. Furthermore, the media center, which is in the core of the entire school, is very open. It works very well, but it's open. There's no separation, so as people are moving around, there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of cutting through the media center while other things are going on as people move around the building. And so that was something that we wanted to try to rectify and improve the situation there, including being a little bit tight, with the existing computer lab and some of that kind of stuff, seeing if we could find a way to gently expand that media center to give us some more functionality, given how important that space is, especially with the technology that we're incorporating into our learning environments. Less glamorous is things about the mechanical systems in the building. The mechanical systems are pretty much original to the building, and we basically just have an old boiler plant and radiators around the school. There's no air conditioning in the school, and there's also no, the ventilation system is somewhat of a struggling kind of system where it's designed back in the 70s. Buildings were very leaky and drafty, and so they designed buildings where they basically just put exhaust fans all over the school and exhaust the air out and expect that the air that replaces it comes in through cracks around your doors and windows and all of that, which is just a very energy inefficient way to maintain your school's environment.
Hey, David, it's Willard. I'm going to move you along a little bit more here. I see you have another 9 slides, and I think it's really important for this group, for this audience, if you would identify the issues and clarify the solution, the proposed fixes, and move through this a little quicker, okay?
Okay, no problem at all.
And we have the opportunity to meet at our board meeting, as I said, as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this was just sort of an initial concept sketch with the opportunity to explore where we are in the school and what areas of the school needed to be addressed. Christian, if you could move to the actual, and then from that concept sketch, we moved on to a formal, actual computer drawn, more defined plan that shows how the school would be rearranged. And this allowed us to then take the drawing and pass it on to people for cost effectiveness. These are just some images that show you the different features that I addressed in that first slide and show you what the eventual solution would look like, just some computer generated images. If you go to the next slide, there's an image of the media center with an expansion out into the courtyard and showing how that space would function within the new school after the renovation was done. And then if we continue on here, then this is addressing the infrastructure needs. As you can see there in the lower right, lots of ponding and leaking, on the school roof itself. From all this work that we were able to do over the last year, if you move forward, Christian, with the slide again, we were able to develop a budget for this project. We had O&G Construction, which is a very large Connecticut-based construction company, do a full takeoff of the project based on the design and narratives that we had developed, and developed the hard costs, which is what true construction costs are, and then soft costs, which are things like fees for architects and testing and some costs like insurance that the owner needs to carry. At this point in the project, there are also contingencies included in that because the design will be furthered along, and we also have things to deal with like unknown, potentially inflation or escalation on the project. If we move forward from there, I'm going to have Christina go on. Oh, she prepared a financing plan for how the island can pay for this project.
Sure. Thank you, David. Can everyone hear me okay?
And Christine, you can keep yours to like 2 minutes, just because I know we have to go. Then
Absolutely.
we can follow back up at our meeting.
Absolutely. Will do. So thank you for having us tonight. So with respect to the financing plan for the capital project, what we do is we look at two pieces of the puzzle. The first is state building aid. We want to make sure we take advantage of state building aid in order to bring any revenue in to help offset any tax impact. And then the other side is what we're looking at as far as what needs to be borrowed. So the district has reserved a capital reserve capital reserve. So $1 million of capital reserve fund will be applied to the project. So the proposition that we put in front of the voters is for $8 million. David showed a number of $7,825,000. You can see that the $8 million is slightly higher than that. The district does not have to spend the full $8 million. They can spend only up to what the project cost is. There's a little bit of cushion in there should things come in at costs unexpected. So the district's building aid ratio is 10%. That means 10% of aidable expenses will be reimbursed by the state education department. The bond percentage is 57%. So that means that 57% of the project falls within that aidable limit. And the building aid is paid over 15 years. So the reimbursement of these building aid payments from the state will be paid over 15 years. So what the impact is the borrowing term. We look at 16 years. That's because we have 1 year short-term financing while the project is being constructed. We have an estimated interest rate of 2.1%, which is high, or I should say conservative, on the high side for today's market. That would relate to total estimated interest expense over the life of about $1.4 million. And that translates into average annual local share of about $555,000. So the district would need to raise $555,000 on average each year to pay for the project. And that calculates out to approximately 60 cents per 1,000 full value. And to make that relatable to a taxpayer, if you have a $500,000 home, we're looking at full value here, it's about $300 a year for that 16 years.
So I just want to, I know we're up against it, but October 21st is our board meeting. We'll be doing this presentation once again, and we're also having another hearing on November 18th at our next board meeting for a vote on December 1st. All questions, please send them directly to me. I'm happy to talk through, and I want to thank the ICB for their time to allow us to share this news with everybody.
Thank you, Christian. That was great. And the last point, I think, was the number one point to take home, or the first point and the last point. The first point being that there are security, air handling issues and roof leaking issues for the school that need to be addressed. And the last point is $300 per 500, impact per $500,000 value of your home. So I think those are important things to keep in mind. With that, we will open it up to questions for anybody, Chris Ingram, or the utility company, Waste Management, or the school. And please send those to either Candy or myself. There was one question that came in, and it asked about the status of the sidewalks. I know that's unrelated to today's presentation, but it's timely and important. And the answer is, sadly, it's taken way too long, but promisingly, we do have everything approved, and the engineering company from Connecticut has got the contract to get the bids, and we have every expectation that the project will begin in the spring. But for the person that sent me that, if you would send me an email, wbsoper@comcast.net, I will include it in my 5th letter about this, or 10th letter, I don't know which, to Southold, to just keep the fire going, and so they realize that it's important. So I would appreciate that. That would be great. The next question that I have, and then I'll open it up, I'll turn it over to Candy, was relative to Tom Seaman's comment about private wells. And the question was, are there any new private wells being built? Don't people need permits before they can dig a private well? And is there any benefit to communicate with Southold about that issue?
I could go on. The short answer is that yes, to drill a private well, you need a permit. The contractor doing the drilling needs a permit and should report the well to the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is a state agency. The water company is charged by the Suffolk County Health Department with monitoring how many wells are on the island and reporting about that. But we are not given direct information. We have identified where the wells are that exist. Some are no longer being used. Others, we have no data as to how large the pumps are, how large the pipes are, how much volume they're pumping. And the DEC basically has a regulation that you're supposed to report how much you're pumping. But we have the water company doesn't have any enforcement authority. I just raise it as an issue for the community because everybody's tapping into the aquifer. Yeah. Now, the aquifer is like a piece of Swiss cheese. We're not all sucking out of the same water resource, but I think people need to be aware of the issue so they don't put too many wells in one place. We certainly monitor wells that are anywhere near the well field that we use as a water company. But it is an issue that's regulated, but nobody's really enforcing the rules.
Okay. Well, if the ICB can be of any help relative to Southold, let us know. The other question that I have was on waste management. David, it was you mentioned that the budget's getting reduced by 90,000. Somebody wanted clarification on that.
Correct. $90,000 less tax levied this year coming up, 2021.
Okay. Can you give an oversight on why that is, or just better management, or?
We felt that our fund balance was unnecessarily high, and we did find some cost savings measures.
Great. Okay, Candy, I know it's getting close to the end of our hour. Do you have a list of people, of questions?
I just have one question. Something about, this would be for Christian, if you can say it kind of briefly. When would this building project begin ideally, and how long would it take? Would you have school in session while you're building?
Yeah, so originally we were aiming for construction during the summer of 21, so this upcoming summer. It is now looking like we will push it out to summer of 22, with the majority of the school construction happening in the summer of 22, and then the remaining happening in the summer of 23, so that school is not interrupted during the school year. So we would spend the first summer getting all the classrooms set up with limited issues happening for the school year, then do a lot of the non-classroom related work during the school year, and then finish up the following summer when students aren't here.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any right now, no.
Okay, great. Susie Parsons, do you have any comments that you want to make? As we always end with your wise
just
comment.
everybody, please be diligent. social distance, wear your masks, clean hygiene, and if there are people on this island who have not filled out the fall COVID census, please do. It will really help the IHP should people need to be contacted. So thank you.
I'd just like to add thanks again to Mecky Kuipers for the great job she's doing in helping IHP. And you're just on the case, Mecky, all the time, and it's outstanding. Thank you again. And thank everybody for being on. We had 108 people, which was great. And if you have any other questions, you can email them to Candy or I, and we'll try to get them answered for you in the meantime. So everybody stay safe, and thank you again.
Thank you, Willard and Dickie, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, David Burnham. And
Thank you, Willard.
school. Thanks, Mary Beth. You have to stay on. Mary Beth, you have to stay on because you're the host until the end, until everybody gets off. Hey, Jane, did we, or Mary Beth, did we record this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Super. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Willard.